Greetings to you viewers from across the globe. You're welcome to the show Viewpoint, where we discover perspectives and embrace dialogue. I'm your host, Odiawa AI.
I'm Grace Idia-Luise, and on today's show, we are going to be talking about the recent reconciliation between Ganduje and Kwankwaso.
And we'll go on the second phase to be talking about INEC, how it intends to build its confidence in the electorate in the upcoming by-elections, rerun elections, and also subsequently in the off-cycle elections. You do well to get social with us across various social media platforms, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel, Veegil Media. Join us in the next phase of the show. Grace, what do you have for me?
So, Odiawa, let's start with this. What's your take about this rift between Ganduje and Kwankwaso?
The rift started as far back as when the NNPP actually became pronounced. Let me put it that way. Now the battle is between the APC and the PDP. But as we speak now, Kwankwaso on his own part, a heavyweight when it comes to APC, and we have Kwankwaso, who is also, or rather Ganduje, who is actually the chairman of the APC and a stalwart and a just living sitting governor of the APC in the center of commerce, Kano State. Now, this rift between them has just actually been on for some time, and it's actually a move by His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu to make sure that warring factions from different political parties come together to make sure that there are no squabbles. But actually, politics is a game of interest. Therefore, there should be something actually making them to reconcile because they stand to gain something. That's the way I see it.
Okay. Yeah, moving on to the next question. With this self-appraisal of Ganduje and self-title, do you feel that he's portraying godfatherism or giving himself this godfatherism title to himself?
Godfatherism is a trend which has been going on for a very long period of time. We can go, okay, the recent reports between, or the recent fracas between Fubara and the former governor, Nyesom Wike. Godfatherism is a situation whereby that godfather doesn't want to lose his political relevance. Why? Because he has actually anointed someone to take over him. And also, probably he wants to clean up his or her tracks. Now, Ganduje on his own part, trying to make sure that with statements like he calling himself the Sheikh or King or Madibu of Kano State, it calls for the citizens of Kano, I don't know how exposed they are, to actually rise up and speak against this, that one man cannot control the state. Because when you begin to dictate the affairs of a particular state or the person on seat serving a state,
it becomes family-oriented business.
Or a cabal, which will not want to leave office at all. Now, we should look at it now in this way, whereby godfatherism, at the end of the day, they now begin to knock heads or together or lock horns. What is now the fate of the citizens of the state? Why? Because one man is controlling or dictating the affairs of the state. That's another question. Another question will now be, what does he stand to gain? And again, I will answer that question whereby he doesn't want to lose his political relevance. Why? Because he still wants to be on top. It's an African mentality, not only a Nigerian mentality here. We always never want to back down or leave power. We always want to hold on to it. That's why most of the time, some people vie for third term bid or maybe infinity bid. They want to stay in power continuously. So this godfatherism is something which is an English word, all right. But it's so pronounced here in our part of the world that it can't be done away with. If you want to do away with, it's a situation whereby you're forced on the floor to shut your trap jaw.
Okay, so Odiawa, if I can understand you correctly now, you are trying to tell us in Nigeria we are operating on godfatherism. We are adopting that thing called godfatherism in this country called Nigeria.
Operating godfatherism, I would say yes, because these godfathers actually instill their governors from the political parties and endorse them or anoint them to be in office. And upon being in office, now the question now arises, what they stand to benefit. Every state, as we speak now, has its own natural resources or assets. Now, these natural resources or assets, they tend to benefit from them. Why? Because this particular candidate has been placed there with them, and they have to, on their own part, benefit from them. Why? Because of how much they have spent. Some have even sold houses, some have even like borrowed from the bank. So they in turn need to like get back these investments from the elected state governor whom they've imposed on people. That's how godfatherism.
What do you think we can do to curb this issue of godfatherism? Because it has bring a lot of issues in Nigeria. We saw the likes of Godwin Obaseki and Oshomole, the previous governor of Edo State. We see what happened. So what do you think how are we going to curb it?
Well, if we will curb godfatherism, I'll say we should stick to the game plan in a game of chess, whereby you have to think steps ahead. Not just steps ahead, be futuristic in your moves. Sometimes you cannot plan your opponent, or you cannot even forecast your opponent's movement. You never see it coming through. So the best thing for godfatherism is to, I would say, in my own opinion, never bow down to godfatherism, because at the end of the day, you will still be answerable one way or the other. Factually or truthfully speaking, we should tell ourselves the truth. We are only answerable to the electorate upon being elected into office, not to serve one man at a point in time. But I tend to, in my own opinion, key into what Obaseki did.
Okay.
He was a deputy governor under Oshomole.
Okay.
But upon being elected into office, he decided to do away with the Oshomole orientation and bring in the Obaseki mindset. Hence the debunking of, what are they calling it? The homeboy addressing. You know, when you get to Edo State, they're always like, okay, you need a homeboy to actually rule the state. But in this case, Obaseki is not a homeboy, he's a technocrat. And he is actually, how far it's correct, it may be true, may not be true, he is actually backing Ighodalo as we speak now, who is another technocrat, I presume. So godfatherism is something that will not be in the best interest of anyone. In my own view, my own opinion, it is something that candidates who are vying for office should not bow down to. And another thing why godfatherism will always continue is because of the fee attached to electoral forms for office. Imagine 50 million naira for an office, and the least requirement you can use to get into office is a WAEC certificate. But those commissioners or ministers serving under these governors or presidents actually need to have qualifications which are way by far superior to a WAEC certificate. So there are so many hidden clauses in which this godfatherism's ideology come into, which need to be checkmated.
Okay, thank you for that. Talking about this Ganduje statement telling Kwankwaso that he's going to be his leader when he eventually crossed to APC, what do you have to say about it? We saw it online. It trended online with the statement he made mention that I'm going to be a leader in APC when you eventually cross to APC.
It falls back to what I said earlier on. Is an intellectual way of messing one up. Let me put it that way, because if you look at it, Kwankwaso is a heavyweight in his political party, and Ganduje is another heavyweight in his political party. So he coming over to his own party is trying to make him look or feel less of himself by bringing him over to his party, by ridiculing him like, you're now my boy, you always be my boy. After he had ridiculed him, because information making the rounds back there when Ganduje was governor that even Kwankwaso could not even get into Kano State. It was as bad as that. And at that time, Ganduje was governor of the state, of course, under the flagship of the APC. Now, he is now out of the APC. I want to feel maybe there should be some kind of threatening signal. That's why he's trying to woo him over to his party. Because as we speak now, the APC no longer holds its ground on the center of commerce, which is Kano State. So Ganduje might feel threatened, and in his bid to like reconcile with him, knowing he's a heavyweight in that region, trying to win him over. So he spells actually, forecastingly speaking, now the intention of PDP and the Labour Party, who are actually trying to indulge in a merger to frustrate or thwart the efforts of the APC.
Okay. The way APC is gaining ground in Nigeria now, what are you going to say? Are you saying, do you think that, or you feel that they want to operate, or they are trying to employ this, or actualizing Nigerian to be operating on one party system as a state?
I would say that is the game plan of APC, dominance. Why? Because It's like, let's go back to colonial rule where the British were trying to engage in this divide and rule. They centered the focus mainly in regions that had pronounced natural resources which were beneficial to them. So the same thing I want to believe is the tactics APC will now be deploying now in making sure that states which are pronounced with mineral resources.
Okay.
Now imagine if we go to back then, let's politically speaking now, let's look at it based on zoning. If you go to the southeast now, it's no news that ABGA and Labour Party are the trending political parties there.
Oh, yes.
And probably PDP also. But if you go to the north, you have the NNPP and the APC also battling with themselves. Now, if you come down southwest here, we're talking about PDP, APC, and Labour Party. It's quite pronounced in Lagos. Lagos is a generality of everyone, whereby they call it no man's land, of course. So now this situation whereby APC now is now making sure Nigeria is blessed, no doubt about that. Every region has its own resources and every region is controlled by a state governor and every state governor is produced by a political party. So if APC is producing that governor, they are actually automatically controlling that state. Now, in falling back to godfatherism, that is where the anointed state governor from the APC will actually come there to rule. Now, I began by saying, for instance, the APC governors who are being produced from the APC. If we look at it, I mentioned Southeast for instance. Okay. Southeast is mainly ABGA and Labour Party, and preferably in third place, the PDP, which is actually trending there. Hope Uzodinma is actually under the flagship of the APC as we speak. And now, as he is under APC, we look at it. With that now, they will begin to penetrate. Now, it's we're not far from the truth whereby the serving FCT minister is now under the cabinet of the ruling APC. And then the present squabble, which is taking place in Port Harcourt as we speak, is no news. Why? Because the region is being controlled by the PDP. Now, if we go over to Jos, looking at it also, analytically speaking further, Jos is also controlled by the PDP. Now, these states I have just mentioned now, even with the Biafra incident, is not pronounced in Imo states. It's more pronounced in states like Anambra and other Igbo-speaking states or Southeastern-speaking states. But areas like Port Harcourt, controlled by the PDP, the fracas is still ongoing. And as we speak, even Jos, the fracas is still ongoing. So I want to believe that even the godfathers have their game plan to throw in all sorts of, should I say, confusion to make sure that, okay, the electorate switches their minds from the ruling party to their own party, to make sure that they actually control that state. And once they control that state, they have access to the resources through the governor.
Moving down to the INEC. INEC tries to restore confidence ahead of the reruns and by-elections. We can see INEC trying to restore the confidence in as much 2023 has come and gone. But the echo is still vibrating because of what happened. We see how INEC failed us for the last general election. So, Mr. Odiawa, do you think that INEC can actually achieve this thing they want to do, restoring the confidence of the masses over them or on them?
For confidence to be restored on the part of INEC, INEC on its own part needs to live up to the amended Electoral Act of 2022. I know they are actually doing the possible best which they need to do. That's another thing on their own part. But when elections are being plagued with irregularities and it is glaring in broad daylight, that confidence can't be won over within seconds. The recent concluded elections were marred with violence and anomalies. Now the question is, with the electorate witnessing all sorts of electoral vices firsthand, maybe from violence, rigging, and other discrepancies which they cannot even voice out, that confidence will take a long time for them to build, even though they are being reassured and statements are being restated for the reassurance. That confidence cannot be built in a very long time. We just
because they have failed us previously.
They failed us in the past. They can't just conclude. Why? Because just concluded off-cycle elections in Kogi, Bayelsa, and Imo. There were talks of irregularities, and these irregularities ended up in the state's election petition tribunals. And that is a deciding factor. And it's quite sad why the tribunal should be a deciding factor for elections. So the confidence in the electorate might not come up anytime soon until they do the needful. And the needful is starting from qualification of the candidates. Because we can't be having issues of falsification of certificates, and when they come on board, or even after winning the elections, they end up in courts, and the court still has their own homework to do to even defend those certificates and dictate who has to rule that particular state or that particular country for the next 4 years.
But we see where this woman, Mary came, the INEC director of voters education and publicity, making us know, giving us hope that they have met with the security agency, the security agency at large, giving us hope that there is going to be security and is going to be very valid this time around. But do you think this, with these promises and statements, is still going to trigger these masses to go out there? Because I could remember the last election which I partake with inside the INEC officials. I think I participated. I saw so many things that happened. Like I vouch myself that I will never participate, even voting, let alone officiating. I will not, because of the violence that occurred during the incident in the polling unit and all of that. Do you think these masses we will pay that attention, or having that hope of going out and voting? Because we have been experiencing this political what's it called, voting apathy of 18 previously.
Well, to start with, what I can get from there is the security agencies and responsibilities of stakeholders in the elections. Now, each person has his or her own responsibilities in the elections. And now in these elections, we have security apparatus in place. Number one, paramountly speaking, is the electoral umpire, which is INEC. It starts with them. What measures have they actually put in place? Before, the police officers were only deployed to take care of the situation. Now, these issues have not been going on every 4 years. It has been going on for a long time, running into decades. Now, for them to actually apply or deploy enhanced security apparatus, I think is a step in the right direction. Why? Because for the Army Inclusive now to be coming in, particularly the Nigerian Air Force, which they have just included now for conveyance using the Hercules, for conveyance of electoral materials, is quite okay. Now, what about riverine areas? Now, we should be applying also the Navy also to deploy electoral materials in areas like Bayelsa. Then the Army also on their own part. But these, the military have their own limits. They are saddled with the responsibility of protecting territorial integrity, not internal issues. Unless issues of national security are threatening the electoral exercise, that is when they swing into action. For instance, the kidnappings and the bombings. That is when they can now swing into action. Then on the part of the police, of course, their sole responsibility is to protect lives and properties. And in protecting lives and properties, the electorates in question there need to be safeguarded during these elections. Politicians on their own part also, they have not heeded to the Electoral Act, which states that they should avoid all sorts of vices as far as violence or verbal violence, let me put it that way, attacking each other before or even during or even after the elections. Politicians also have a major role to play. Then the electorate on their own part also, in coming out to vote, once you're done voting, you can leave the polling booth. Okay. Then I want to believe that also agencies which are out there, international observers, they also have a role to play. And that role is that as it's going on, they should state the facts. I commend bodies like SERAP. They are actually stating it as it is. They give out the facts, they give out the figures. And once they give it out there, they are certain that, okay, yes, this is going to happen. But in the case of Nigeria, even when they have even doled out those facts and figures, it becomes a situation whereby the truth is altered and the electorates are left aloof. So every stakeholder in the election needs to play, should I say righteously? I think that's the right word to use. To play righteously in the game of the political race here.
Okay, you've talking about every stakeholder that is being attached to the Electoral Commission. we see that media is part of it. Do you think media is doing more good than harm in anything called election?
The media on its own part has a very major role, not a minimal role to play, because the truth that is dispersed out there is actually what will be filtering into the ears of people, and the lies which are fed out there is what will actually also filter into the ears of people. So the media on its own arm should be apolitical. Why? Because they should be neutral enough to know that this person who they are reporting actually needs to not confuse the masses, because some media houses should be prone to receiving bribe, and when they receive their bribe, they doctor the reports, and when they doctor the reports, you're also a stakeholder in confusing or creating confusion. That's another thing.
Okay, Mr. Odia, well, here comes to the end of today's show. I think we are good to go with all of this, and let's see how the masses will take this of INEC trying to restore this confidence. Let's see how it goes,
try their possible best,
and let's wait for this. Let's wait for this primary election, and let's see how it will trigger the masses to come out to in the next coming election. Thank you.
We're still on the political scene, or in the political arena. Everyone has his own race to run, and everyone has his own game to play. I'm Odiawa here, and the show has been Viewpoint, where we discover perspectives and embrace dialogue.
Oh, I'm Idealist Grace once again.
Until next time, I'll see you when you see me. Thanks for watching.